You know how people say weddings bring out the best and worst in people? I used to laugh at that. Thought it was just something bitter divorced aunts whispered while sipping wine at the kids' table. But last summer, I learned how true it really was. And the way I learned, well, it still stings when I think about it. I was 28, single, and coasting through life in that late 20s limbo, where you're not quite lost but not exactly found either. My best friend Sarah was the one steady point I had. We'd been inseparable since high school. Sleepovers in her parents' basement, swapping CDs, whispering secrets under the covers about boys we'd never dared talk to out loud. Even when college pulled us in different directions, the tether between us never snapped. So when she called one spring evening, her voice bubbling with excitement, I didn't need her to say the words. I just knew. "Mike proposed," she squealed before I even managed a hello. I was grinning so hard my cheeks hurt. I remember pacing my tiny apartment, trying to picture the ring, trying to imagine Sarah, the girl who used to cry over algebra tests, suddenly somebody's future wife. She asked me to be her maid of honor between giggles and tears, and of course I said yes. I was over the moon. If only I'd known what was coming. The months leading up to the wedding were a blur of planning. Pinterest boards and group texts that never stopped buzzing. Sarah wanted something simple. Nothing too Instagram perfect, just real, she kept saying. The venue was a vineyard outside Napa, elegant but not pretentious. The kind of place where sunlight poured like honey across the hills at dusk. And then came the bachelorette weekend. Sarah wasn't the Vegas with sashes type. She wanted wine tasting with her closest friends. A little laughter, a little indulgence, and a lot of memories. Just us girls. I thought it was perfect. The day we arrived, the air smelled like grapes and oak barrels, and the laughter spilled as freely as the Chardonnay. We clinked glasses, teased Sarah about cold feet, and posed for photos under fairy lights. It should have been bliss, but there was something. All night, Sarah's phone kept lighting up. She'd glance down, smirk, type something quickly, then tuck it away again. At first, I brushed it off. Mike, her fiancé, was probably just being clingy. Sweet, right? Except the way she giggled. Those stifled little laughs she tried to hide behind her glass. It didn't feel like the kind of texts you'd want to share with your soon-to-be husband. I remember leaning over and asking, "Everything okay?" She blinked, startled, then nodded too quickly. Yeah. Just Mike. You know how he is. I did know Mike. Or at least I thought I did. He was the guy who showed up to our movie nights with snacks, who helped me move apartments when I couldn't afford movers. The kind of guy who seemed too solid to ever surprise you. If Sarah said it was him texting, I believed her. Mostly. But that night, lying awake in the guest house, I felt a strange unease settle into my chest, like the first rumble of a storm you can't see yet. The weeks ticked by, and soon enough it was rehearsal dinner night. If you've never been maid of honor, let me tell you, it's not all champagne and speeches. It's being the unpaid wedding planner, therapist, and errand runner rolled into one. I was juggling flowers, seating charts, and an uncle who insisted on bringing his new girlfriend no one had met. Somewhere in the chaos, Mike pulled me aside, his hand on my shoulder, his smile warm. "Hey, thanks for everything. Sarah's lucky to have you." It was a sweet moment. Or it should have been. But later that night, fate decided to twist the knife. I went down to the hotel lobby to grab a bottle of water before crashing. That's when I saw him. Mike. Back turned, phone pressed to his ear, voice low. At first, I didn't pay attention. But then I caught the words. "I can't wait to see you tomorrow. Just act normal around her." My stomach dropped so fast I thought I might faint. Her. Who was her? I stood frozen, gripping my water bottle so tight it crinkled. Every rational part of me wanted to step forward, to demand answers, but I didn't. Instead, I slinked back toward the elevator, heart pounding, mind spinning. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay there replaying his words, wondering if I'd misheard, convincing myself it had to be something innocent. Maybe he was talking about a coworker, a surprise for Sarah. Something, anything that didn't mean what my gut screamed it meant. The morning of the wedding dawned bright and frantic. Hair curlers, makeup brushes, dresses steaming in the corner. Sarah looked radiant, like every bride should. I forced myself to smile, to play my part, but inside I was unraveling. Because if my suspicions were right, if Mike wasn't the man Sarah thought he was, then everything about this day was built on a lie. And it was my best friend walking straight into it. That was the morning I made myself a promise. I'd watch, I'd listen, I'd gather the truth, no matter how ugly it turned out to be. And by the end of that day, I would wish more than anything that I'd been wrong. I wish I could say that after the rehearsal dinner, I convinced myself I'd imagine it, that maybe the wine, the exhaustion, the nerves, had tricked my ears into hearing things that weren't there. But the truth is, once you hear someone whisper, "Just act normal around her," you can't unhear it. It burrows into your brain like a splinter, festering with every heartbeat. The next morning, I plastered on my maid of honor smile. But inside, I was chewing on a secret so bitter it burned my throat. Weddings are supposed to be chaos wrapped in joy, right? That day was no different. The hotel hallways buzzed with bridesmaids shuffling in robes, hair half-pinned, mascara streaked from laughter. Florists darted past with bouquets. And Sarah's mom was already teary-eyed, clutching tissues like lifelines. I tried to sink into the madness, to lose myself in the whirl of bobby pins and perfume. But every time I looked at Mike, I saw him in that lobby, phone pressed to his lips, whispering to some mystery woman. And worse, every time my eyes flicked across the room, they landed on Emma. Emma, Sarah's cousin. The girl who'd always hovered on the edges of our friend group, sliding in with her sly smile and perfectly timed jokes. She was in the bridal party, of course. They were family. And if I'm being brutally honest, I'd never fully trusted her. Don't get me wrong, she wasn't a villain straight out of a soap opera. She was charming, the kind of girl who turned heads at family reunions, who knew how to flirt without looking like she was trying. But there was something calculated in the way she moved through life. She collected attention like currency. And now, with Mike's words ringing in my ears, every little thing about Emma seemed magnified. The way she leaned too close to him during the rehearsal. The way she laughed a little too loudly at his jokes. The way his eyes lingered on her when he thought no one was watching. I'd seen it before, months earlier, at the engagement party. The champagne was flowing. The band was playing Sinatra. And Sarah was radiant in a white cocktail dress. I remember standing by the bar, sipping a gin and tonic, when I caught sight of Mike and Emma on the patio. It was nothing scandalous, just a hand on his arm, a lean-in too close, a shared laugh that looked too private. I'd brushed it off at the time. They were family. What else could it be? But now, with hindsight, that moment played in my mind like evidence at a trial. By the time hair and makeup were done, my stomach was a knot of dread. Sarah sat in front of the mirror, glowing while I fastened her necklace. She caught my reflection and smiled. "Nervous?" she asked. I nearly choked on the irony. Nervous? I was drowning in it. But I forced a laugh. For you, not me. She reached for my hand, squeezing it. "I don't know what I'd do without you." And that's when the weight of it nearly crushed me. Because how do you tell your best friend, your sister in all but blood, that the man she's about to marry might not be who she thinks he is? How do you shatter her dream day with whispers you're not even sure you can prove? I wanted to scream. I wanted to drag her out of that chair and run. But instead, I smiled. And I kept the secret. The ceremony itself was a blur. White chairs on the lawn, petals scattered down the aisle, violins lilting in the breeze. Mike stood at the altar, handsome in his suit, every inch the picture of a perfect groom. But as Sarah walked toward him, veil drifting, I swore I saw his eyes flick, not at her, but toward Emma, seated in the front row. A flash, a glance, gone in an instant, but enough to make my stomach lurch. I told myself I was imagining it. That paranoia was painting shadows where none existed. But the whispers from the night before clawed at me. Just act normal around her. That evening, as the reception roared to life, I tried to push it down. I danced, I toasted, I clinked glasses. I even laughed when the flower girl face-planted into the cake table. But every laugh felt hollow, every sip of champagne bitter. Because every time Emma drifted near Mike, the air around them seemed to thrum with something unsaid. She brushed past him at the bar, fingers grazing his hand too long. She leaned into his ear to whisper something during dinner. And his smile, God, his smile, wasn't the smile of a man humoring his fiancé's cousin. It was something else, something intimate, and Sarah, glowing, blissfully unaware, sat beside him, her hand resting on his arm like he was her anchor in the storm. That night, when I finally collapsed onto my bed, the guilt consumed me. What kind of friend was I? To stand by and say nothing, to let her walk blind into heartbreak because I was too afraid to be wrong. But then the doubt crept in again. What if I was wrong? What if I blew up her wedding day over a misunderstanding? I'd be the villain, the jealous maid of honor who ruined everything. I lay awake for hours, torn between loyalty and fear, truth and silence. And in the silence of that hotel room, I made myself a vow. If the truth came out, if the cracks widened and the mask slipped, I'd be there to catch her. Even if it meant burning everything else down. Weddings are funny things. From the outside, they look flawless. Flowers arranged, just so. Champagne glasses catching the light. Every detail screaming perfection. But if you've ever stood behind the curtain, you know the truth. Weddings are chaos, stitched together with bobby pins and blind hope. And that morning, as the sun spilled gold across the Napa hills, the chaos was at full volume. Bridesmaids flurried around in silk robes, hair sprayed into gravity-defying curls, lipstick blotting on tissues. The photographer barked gentle orders while Sarah's mom cried for the 5th time before noon. I should have been giddy. I should have been soaking up the magic. Instead, I felt like I was holding my breath, waiting for something, anything to shatter. Sarah was radiant. There's no other word. Her gown was simple but elegant, ivory satin that hugged her figure and spilled into a train. The veil floated around her like a halo. For a second, watching her laugh with her mom, I let myself forget. Forget the whispers, the glances, the nagging suspicion lodged in my chest. Maybe I'd been wrong. Maybe the night in the hotel lobby was just my imagination. Maybe today would be perfect, and I could finally exhale. But then I saw Mike. He stood at the altar, tie perfectly knotted, hair slicked just enough. From a distance, he looked like every girl's dream. Steady, handsome, the kind of man you'd trust with your forever. But when Sarah stepped onto the aisle, bouquet trembling in her hands, his eyes flickered. Not just at her, but sideways, toward Emma. It was quick, a glance so fleeting most wouldn't notice, but I did. I always noticed. And in that moment, I knew I hadn't been wrong. The ceremony itself went off like a dream. Bows exchanged, rings slipped onto trembling fingers, the kiss sealed with applause. Guests dabbed their eyes. Phones lit up like fireflies, capturing the moment. Sarah looked like the happiest woman alive. But even as the violins swelled and the newlyweds walked hand in hand down the aisle, something in me recoiled, because I could see the cracks, fine as spider webs in glass, waiting for the right pressure to split everything apart. The reception was held in the vineyard's great hall, strings of lights twinkling above long wooden tables. The smell of roasted chicken and rosemary filled the air. Guests buzzed with laughter, clinking glasses, toasting to love and happily ever after. I floated from table to table, making sure everything ran smoothly. That's what maids of honor do. We keep the machine turning. But my eyes, traitorous as ever, kept drifting to Mike and Emma. At first, it was subtle. She leaned over to whisper something during dinner, her lips brushing dangerously close to his ear. He laughed, not the polite laugh you give a cousin, but the kind that creases your eyes, that makes you forget the world. Then came the first dance. Sarah and Mike swayed under the lights, her dress gliding across the floor, his hand firm at her waist. It should have been beautiful. But when the song ended and the dance floor opened, Emma was the first to grab him. I watched, frozen, as she pulled him into the crowd. At first, it was innocent enough. Cousins, family, everyone dancing together. But then she pressed closer, too close. Her head tipped back in laughter. Her hand lingered at his chest, and his fingers, God, his fingers, rested at her waist a second too long. Guests started to notice. Whispers rippled through the crowd like a breeze, stirring leaves. And then I saw it. Sarah, standing at the edge of the dance floor, bouquet clutched tight, her smile faltering. That's when it all began to unravel. Emma, tipsy from champagne, was reckless. She leaned into Mike, her dress brushing his legs, her laugh carrying above the music. It was the kind of closeness you couldn't mistake for family affection anymore. And Sarah. Oh, Sarah. Her face crumpled as she watched. She excused herself, slipping through the crowd, heading for the hallway that led to the bathrooms. Panic clawed at me. Without thinking, I followed. I found her in front of the mirror, clutching the porcelain sink like it was the only thing holding her upright. Mascara streaked down her cheeks. She looked at me in the mirror, eyes wide and broken. "Tell me I'm imagining it," she whispered. Her voice cracked, raw. "Please, tell me I'm imagining it." My throat closed. I wanted to lie, to protect her from the shattering truth, but the words wouldn't come. And then the door burst open. Emma stumbled in, giggling, followed by Mike, who looked like a man caught between two burning buildings. The air turned electric. Sarah spun, fury and heartbreak blazing in her eyes. "How could you?" she screamed. And in that cramped bathroom, with the muffled thump of music leaking through the walls, the perfect wedding day finally shattered. Bathrooms at weddings aren't supposed to hold history-defining moments. They're meant for lipstick touch-ups, whispered giggles, and stolen minutes of relief from high heels. But that night, under harsh, fluorescent lights and the smell of too many perfumes mingling, one bathroom became the stage where Sarah's entire world cracked open. She spun on her heel as the door slammed, her veil trembling with the force of her movements. Her eyes, once sparkling with joy, were storm clouds ready to burst. "How could you?" she hissed at Mike, voice shaking. Mike froze, his face drained, then hardened into something practiced, something defensive. What are you talking about? Emma stood just behind him, tipsy and unsteady, her lipstick smudged, eyes wide like a deer caught in headlights. You think I didn't see? Sarah's voice rose, echoing off the tiles. You think I don't notice the way you look at her? The way she touches you, on our wedding day. Silence. And then, the unraveling. Mike stepped forward, palms raised. Sarah, listen. It's not what it looks like. She had too much to drink, that's all. But Emma laughed. A bitter, broken laugh that made the hairs on my arms stand up. Oh, come on, Mike! Don't do that. Not here. Not now. Sarah's gaze snapped to her cousin. What do you mean, not now? And that's when Emma's dam burst. Months. It had been months. Secret meetings, late-night texts, Netflix binges logged under Sarah's account, stolen kisses when no one was looking. Emma's words tumbled out in a slurry of guilt and defiance, her voice cracking between sobs and laughter. I didn't mean for it to happen, she choked. It just did. He said he loved me. He said he didn't know how to tell you. Sarah staggered back as if she'd been struck. Her bouquet slipped from her hand, petals scattering across the tile. You. Her voice broke. You're my family. And you. She turned to Mike, her chest heaving. You're my husband. The door creaked open. A bridesmaid poked her head in, eyes wide at the scene unfolding. Whispers spread like wildfire down the hall. By the time the DJ's upbeat music filtered through the walls again, half the reception knew something was wrong. Outside, guests leaned toward one another, murmuring behind champagne glasses. Did you hear? The cousin? On the wedding day? Inside, Sarah's world burned. Mike tried again, his voice low, pleading. Sarah, I made a mistake. A stupid mistake. But it's over. It doesn't mean anything. Emma's sobs told a different story. It wasn't nothing. Don't you dare say it was nothing. The room tilted. My heart hammered so loud I thought it would echo through the walls. Sarah's hands trembled as she tore the ring from her finger. It hit the sink with a metallic clink that felt louder than the DJ's entire playlist. Get out, she whispered. Her mascara streaked down her cheeks. Black rivers against pale skin. Both of you. Get out of my sight. I rushed to her side as Mike stammered. As Emma collapsed into tears. My arms wrapped around Sarah, her body shaking like a storm tearing through. I've got you, I whispered. No matter what, I've got you. And that's when she broke. Sobs racked her frame, raw and uncontainable. She clutched at me like I was the only solid thing left. Outside, the wedding crumbled. Guests avoided eye contact, whispering in clusters. The DJ, bless him, kept the music upbeat, but no amount of uptown funk could drown out the rumors rippling through the hall. By the time Sarah emerged, veil askew, eyes swollen, the fairy tale was dead. She walked past the tables without a word, past the shocked faces and clinking glasses. She didn't look at Mike. She didn't look at Emma. She didn't look at anyone. She just walked, and I followed. That night, in the hotel room, she collapsed onto the bed, still in her gown, staring at the ceiling. I can't go on the honeymoon, she murmured. Her voice was flat, emptied of everything but exhaustion. I can't even look at him. The papers came 2 days later. Annulment. The marriage that had begun with violins and vows ended before the ink on the license had fully dried. But in that bathroom under fluorescent lights, in front of smudged mirrors and scattered petals, one thing became clear. The perfect love story was gone. And in its place was the raw, brutal truth. 2 days. That's how long the marriage lasted. 48 hours from vows to annulment papers. From forever to nothing. I sat beside Sarah in the lawyer's office as she signed her name on documents that felt heavier than any contract should. Her hands shook, but her eyes were dry. The tears had burnt themselves out in the bathroom that night, leaving only a hollow kind of strength behind. Mike wasn't there. Neither was Emma. It was just Sarah, me, and a man in a gray suit who spoke in clipped legal phrases that didn't begin to cover the wreckage. When it was done, we walked out into the California sun. The world went on as if nothing had changed. Birds chirping, cars honking, tourists snapping photos of vineyards. But for Sarah, everything had. The first weeks were a blur of survival. She moved back into her parents' house temporarily, her gown stuffed in a bag like a corpse no one wanted to deal with. The wedding gifts sat unopened in the garage, reminders of promises already broken. And me? I became her shadow. Every night after work, I'd show up with takeout and pints of ice cream. We cycled through bad movies, sitcom reruns, even documentaries neither of us cared about. Anything to drown out the silence that pressed in when the screen went black. Sometimes she'd cry. Sometimes she'd rage, cursing Mike's name until her throat went raw. Sometimes she'd just sit there, staring into space, like she was trying to figure out how her life had derailed so quickly. And through it all, I sat beside her, because that's what best friends do. There were moments, though, when the pain cut through me too. I'd catch myself replaying every sign I'd ignored. The glance at the engagement party, the giggles at the bachelorette night, the whispered call in the hotel lobby. I could have said something, should have said something. But I hadn't. And part of me carried that guilt, heavy as a stone. One night, over melting ice cream, I admitted it. I knew, I whispered, before the wedding. I heard him. I saw things. I didn't know how to tell you. Sarah looked at me, eyes tired but gentle. You were trying to protect me, she said. And honestly, I don't think I would have believed you. Not then. Not until I saw it myself. Her forgiveness was quiet, but it lifted a weight I hadn't realized was crushing me. As the weeks turned into months, Sarah began to heal. She started therapy. She joined a yoga class. She even dyed her hair, trading the soft blonde she'd worn for years for a fiery auburn that made her look like someone new, someone who'd survived the fire and wasn't afraid to show the scorch marks. Emma moved out of town, shamed into silence by the whispers that followed her everywhere. Mike tried, briefly, to reach out, to apologize, to explain. But Sarah never answered. His number was blocked, his name erased, and slowly, life stitched itself back together. One night, months later, we sat on my couch, wine glasses in hand, watching some trashy reality dating show. A contestant made a grand speech about soulmates, and Sarah snorted. Do you think true love even exists? She asked. I thought about it for a long moment. I think it does, I said finally. But it's not what people think. It's not the grand gestures or perfect vows. It's the people who show up, the ones who stay. That's love. She smiled at me then. Small but real. Then I guess I've got that. And I realized I did too. Because if there's one thing that nightmare wedding taught me, it's this. Love isn't always the person who promises forever. Sometimes it's the friend who sits beside you through the wreckage, spooning ice cream into your mouth when you're too broken to eat. Sometimes love looks like survival. I've sworn off being maid of honor forever. That role is cursed for me now. But I don't regret standing by Sarah. Not for a second. Her story didn't end in that bathroom. It didn't end with annulment papers or unopened wedding gifts. It's still being written. Stronger, sharper, wiser. And as for Mike and Emma, well, if you're listening to this, just know, karma has a way of catching up. And it doesn't forget.